I am finishing up with a little bit of cheese right on top of a homemade Bolognese. Let me tell you something. It seems like a lot of work, it takes a few steps, but I walk you through each one to show you why it makes the best sauce. It's super delicious and worth every step. Let's make some. Today we're gonna conquer what is honestly fairly easy, but could be controversial. And it's Bolognese or Bolognese. It's a meat sauce is what it is. And at its core, obviously this is not gonna be the most traditional probably one. I am not from Italy, but guess what? I do know meat sauce. We have made this many times at home or variations of it. And you're gonna see that there are certain steps that you need to take because they will make sure the meat is tender, more delicious. And all these little items we're gonna do make a big difference in making one of the best meat sauces that you can really have. So this is one of those that you might wanna do on a weekend. It takes a little bit longer maybe than for a weeknight, but if you make it ahead, it's delicious as leftovers and one of those that keeps almost getting better, I think. So what we're gonna start with are our vegetables. And the one difference here is that we're gonna do, obviously, onion, celery, and carrot. And we want those to be kind of finely chopped up. So to do that, instead of having really good chopping skills, we're gonna do it all in a food processor. So I'm making the onion and everything kind of fairly small. I'm not worrying too much about being even because the food processor is gonna do the work. So what we're really trying to do here is make a delicious rounded flavor underneath everything. So we're not gonna have chunks of carrot, chunks of celery, anything like that. Instead, what we're gonna have are all these are gonna just play background and they're gonna build a delicious sauce on top. So I'm doing it very rough, as you can see. And now on carrots, you know my method on carrots. I do not, if they are organic and if I grew them, which I do still have carrots from last year left, but if I scrub them well, I don't peel them, especially when something like this. There's no reason to. Scrub them well, don't worry about that. I will live on that mountain alone if I need to. So what I'm gonna do is put these right into, and we're just gonna pulse this until it gets to a nice kind of even consistency. So you can see it's pretty quick. A food processor just makes light work. You can do this by hand if you want to, or use one of those. My grandma would have used a countertop food grinder that you put on the counter. Do you guys remember this? Anyway, so I'm just gonna put this right into some melted butter that's been heating on the stove. Now, we've learned from the greats that butter really is wonderful in tomato sauces. It adds a beautiful rounded flavor, and it to me is really important. So as I'm doing this, you can hear that it's starting to sizzle right away. That's what you want. We're gonna just slowly cook these vegetables. We're gonna let them just kind of soften, let their natural juices release. And the important thing, if you wanna know one step that could make anyone to me a better cook at home, a better home cook, seasoning as you go. So what I'm gonna do is make sure I salt this now, little bits of salt like this, seasoning the layers as you go. You're gonna always end up using less salt because in the end, it will be much more seasoned and it will just have a better flavor in the end. So I'm gonna let this go, gonna let this saute, and we'll keep going. So this has been cooking slowly for a few minutes here, and you can see what it's doing. It doesn't look too different, but it's really turning the onion translucent. It's really starting to cook down. It's just beginning to want to kind of coat the bottom of the pan. So we know we're ready to move on. So the next step is all this garlic that I have minced up. I just want to add it right in. I don't like to give it quite that long cooking process in the beginning. I want it to have a little bit more of a short cooking time before we add the meat in. So I'm gonna put the garlic in, just stir it in and let it cook for just about, 30 seconds to a minute. And while it's doing that, we can talk about the meat, because the meat here is really essential over here. So what I have here is half ground beef, half ground pork. Ground beef is more traditional, but what I like is the pork really offsets that beef. It gives a little bit lighter flavor. It mellows the meat a little bit, and I really like the mixture of the two. I think it's actually really, to me, a great step in this. So what I'm gonna do is put this right in here, and we're gonna first just cook these meats side by side, right in this mixture until they're fully browned, and then we'll move on. So you can see I've taken some care while it's browning to really break it into small pieces. I just use either a spoon or this is like a spurtle, and I just sit here and I break it into small bits, and that gives you a nice fine texture. But now the whole point of Bolognese is all these little moments. They seem like steps, they seem like what's the point, but they each really make and develop flavor, and then also give you really tender meat. So this next step is really kind of important, and it's a little weird, but we're gonna add some whole milk. We're gonna pour it right in. And what this is gonna do, we're gonna actually pretty much cook all of this out, but it's gonna really tenderize that meat. Milk has that ability to tenderize meat, and we want to let it just slowly cook and simmer until pretty much all that milk is dissipated. Now, all these seem like one extra step, and the reason I'm talking through it so much is I want you to understand it's not just a step that doesn't matter. Each of these makes a little bit of a difference, and believe me, in that end result when you're eating it, it's so worth each of these. It's pretty simple. It's one of those, just enjoy it on a cold day. Make this bolognese. So after this, we'll have a couple more steps and then it just simmers. So you can see what's really happened is that milk has really condensed in. It has really just kind of gone down to nothing, and you just see a little bit of liquid left in the bottom. That means the milk is doing its thing. It's gonna tenderize now. With milk products, you know this in a cheese sauce or a white sauce, we like to do what? A little bit of nutmeg. So I'm gonna do just a little bit of fresh ground nutmeg. This really enhances the flavors in the milk. It sounds surprising, but you get this nuttiness that comes out about it. And so we're just gonna put that right in there. Just stir it in. You don't need to worry about it cooking really or anything. It works with the milk, and it doesn't just, if you're saying, I don't like nutmeg, calm. It doesn't do that. So now what we're gonna do is do the exact same thing, but with wine. Now, if you don't like alcohol, that's fine. Use a beef stock or another type of stock, but we're gonna put this right in here. And what I wanna let it do is just pretty much cook down then and dissipate. That's the important part here. We just want it to cook down. While you're doing that, you can pour yourself a glass of the wine if that's what you're drinking. You know what? You could drink the beef broth too if you want to. And just stir this now. Let it cook down till it looks just like that milk did. And then we'll keep going. So this is now getting to the point where we can add in the tomato paste. And you've seen me do this before. Tomato paste is a rich condensed tomato, but we want to cook it a little bit to give it a little bit sweeter flavor, almost caramelize. So if you look in this pot, you can see that now look, that wine is much drier. There's a little bit of liquid, but look at that. You really have a dry consistency now, but what you have is beautifully tenderized meat with rich flavor. So I'm gonna add in this paste right into the center. Put it right there and just start stirring it in. With that, I'm gonna layer in a little bit more salt. Again, remember, if we layer our salt, in the end, we really don't add a lot of salt. Some pepper, just some fresh black pepper that's ground. And I wanna just stir this paste into the mixture and let it just start cooking. So you can see as I'm stirring it, it slowly starts working in. And then you can just kind of finish doing that. And I just wanna let it cook a little bit before we put all the tomatoes in and really give it that long simmer. So if we come over here, let's talk tomatoes. So to me, and a lot of traditional, love whole tomatoes, the whole plum tomatoes. You can use San Marzano tomatoes too. What I think is important is to know you want them with the juice, but also you want to break them up. Now, a lot of people just go in with their hand and crush them up. You can do that. You can also just take scissors and just do this. The one thing I will check for sometimes is as I'm doing it, sometimes you see pieces of peel still. I don't love that. I get that from my mom. She hates the consistency of pieces of peel in a salsa or in a bolognese like this, you know? So she'll just take them out, and I kind of think that it does mess with the texture. So sometimes when I see them too, because these are flash steamed usually, they don't always get all the pieces out. But what I'm doing, you can see, is just really quickly breaking them down, but still giving them a little bit of texture. Along with this, we're gonna pour these in, and non-traditional again, but I like to put a little piece of Parmesan rind in. Now locally at a grocery store, I can get just the rinds in a bag. They're really reasonable, a couple dollars, and you can get these rinds. You can also, if you get a piece of Parmesan, have a rind on it and cut it off. I know some people hate that, but I love this because it's a flavor bomb. You can put it in soups, in stews, in braises, and it just adds this beautiful, delicious note. So you're gonna see over here, this has really started cooking. It's starting to want to coat the bottom of the pan just a little bit. That's what you want. You want that richness of that tomato paste to do its magic, which it is. So now what I'm gonna do is we're gonna put in our tomatoes. Just put them right in there. And these are gonna get a long simmer, and that's what you want. So some recipes will go, you know, other ones will go up to 3 hours. Some will go even longer, some will go short. I like to go at least an hour, let it really simmer. The important part you wanna do though is let it sit there and simmer slowly, uncovered. I put a Parmesan rind in, I put some bay leaves in. If you can find fresh ones, that's gonna have more flavor. And what I'm gonna do is turn this down very low and just let it barely simmer and watch it. If you wanna go for 3 hours, do it. The flavor will get deeper, it will develop even more. You just may have to add a little bit of stock or water every so often if it gets too dry. But I find that sweet spot is at least an hour where it really starts developing that flavor. So I'm gonna just let this simmer uncovered because it's just gonna condense and really be even more beautiful. So in the last 10 minutes of this simmering, My pasta, I throw in, let that cook, and it depends what pasta you're doing. So traditional maybe would be more of a tagliatelle. I'm doing rigatoni, because that's what I like. A lot of times too, bolognese will be made for maybe a lasagna or something. So I'm putting the bay leaves in here, and I'm gonna take out that cheese rind. It's done its work. And what I wanna do is just make sure it gets soft, but believe me, all that flavor is in here. And look at this, look how it's somewhat drier than you would think. See when I'm stirring it, there's not a ton of liquid. And like I said, you could keep on simmering and simmering and simmering to the point of needing to add even more liquid just to even deepen those flavors. So what I wanna do now is, I just turned off my pasta. I'm gonna just move it over kind of beside, and I'm just gonna start putting my pasta right in there. And notice I'm not like draining it hard, I'm lifting. And if they have some water on them, that is just fine because pasta water has the starch from the pasta, which actually can help bind that pasta with the sauce, which is what we wanna do. So I don't mind if I'm getting a little bit of that liquid in there with it. And that pasta water, the reason I'm doing it like this as opposed to just like draining all this pasta out in the sink or something, is this way I just easily save the water if I want to and can use it as needed in the sauce. Because that's your final step in any sauce you make, is really that you can use the water to thicken or bind if you need to. So what I wanna do is just stir this together, and it is still at that simmer stage. And I want that because I want it to be able to kind of final cook the pasta. The pasta's al dente, and that goes for any pasta you're cooking. And that just means it's not fully quite cooked. You want to finish cooking in this sauce for just a couple minutes to really absorb in the flavors. So this went for just a minute or two, and you can see it really starts to bind. But what here I wanna do is, I have even some more water here. Never feel bad adding some water. It almost makes it more creamy. It seems counterintuitive. You're gonna think, oh, that just waters it down. No, see how it's cloudy? That's that starchiness from the pasta. And that's really, to me, essential in finishing it up. It does. These are those little things that take your food. These aren't my ideas. These aren't my inventions, but they're those things that take your food from, oh, it's good, to, wow, they did something special. It really didn't. It's just simple. So what we have here is, we have dinner, and that's the best part. So you can now just serve it up, and look how that pasta just clings with the sauce as I make a mess, but that's so delicious. Now, anytime, if you do make a mess, don't feel bad, but I do think you need to clean it up because I think it makes it look better. Just to have a nice plate. Kind of thing that would happen in a restaurant is just to clean it up, that final person before they bring it to the table maybe. But this is the simple part. Now the wine you used in, if you're someone that likes wine, that's a great one to serve with it. But what you can also do is take your cheese, a little bit on top, just give it a little bit of that Parmesan right on top. It's so good. And that will just finish it off. So now you have your bolognese. That's what I love about this, is how simple it is. I shouldn't, okay. I don't want to keep eating it. It's so good. To me, what's special about this, you're gonna think, well, you didn't put seasonings in it. You didn't put Italian seasoning, basil, oregano. The depth of flavor that is created in all those steps is what really makes this special. A beautiful seasoning comes from that rind we put in that almost gains this nuttiness, but that nuttiness is also coming from that little pinch of nutmeg that we put with that milk after it cooked into it and tenderized the meat. This is something special. This is something that once you make it, you're gonna think, I just spoiled myself. And we all deserve spoiling once in a while. We all need spoiling once in a while. So that's what I hope you do with this. I hope you share this recipe around, share this video around so everyone can see that, guess what? It's fun to go out to a restaurant and have delicious food. It's also possible to make it at home, enjoy it with your family, with your friends, entertaining. Don't think of going over the top maybe to entertain. Make a big thing of pasta, serve it on a beautiful platter. Your guests, they're gonna enjoy it. So check my website, wiseguy.com, for this recipe. All my other recipes are all on there. Until next time, make something delicious. You'll be glad.